Richard Burton does a great job of acting crazy. Like you said, at a certain point, he's like, divorce is like killing. After the first time, it doesn't seem so difficult. Oh gosh.
And then I love that scene where she was with her daughter or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they said you slept with your brother or something, and she's like, "Oh my God, he's lost his mind."
Hi, everyone. Today's Swoon-Worthy podcast topic is a historical one, Anne Boleyn. We mentioned her in our very first podcast episode on Marie Antoinette because both young women have been considered infamous historical figures. But I know my sister and I feel sympathy for both. We consider them victims of men, their family, governments, and advisors. Marie Antoinette was executed at the guillotine at age 37, and Boleyn was beheaded for treason at either the age 29 or 35. Historians are, in disagreement over her age there. And now this may not seem like a swoon-worthy topic. Anne Boleyn led a fascinating life, and there have been many swoon-worthy adaptations of her fascinating story. Anne Boleyn is so much more than the second wife of Henry VIII, but I feel that the more sympathetic take on his wives is recent. I feel like when we were growing up, we weren't even taught what a monster Henry VIII was. We were taught that Anne Boleyn was ambitious, the cause of Henry's divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Kayla, do you think this sentiment has changed over time, or is it the same? What are people's feelings about Anne Boleyn? What do you think?
I think that she had a very unique situation and she was probably very smart. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter, and it didn't really matter what she was like because she had little power in that situation. And Henry, I think it was also a little complicated with him and what caused him to be the way he was. But at the end of the day, Anne Boleyn and her story has stood the test of time. People are very, still to this day, interested in her life and what happened to her.
I like what you said about her being very smart. I think all accounts of her have been that she was clever, she was bold, witty, had a sharp tongue, frank and honest. And, I think perhaps she was a victim of the situation. Maybe she did play the game. Perhaps she did charm Henry VIII, use her feminine charms, maybe what she learned growing up at the French court. Because what's interesting, so Anne Boleyn was born in either 1501 or 1507.
Yeah, I don't get why people don't know when she was born. Like
I
I
knew
feel
you
like
were
she
going to
was
say
a
that.
prominent figure, and like how do they not know how old she was or anything like that?
Documentation, I don't know. This is a long time ago. But in 1515, Anne and her older sister Mary Boleyn became attendants for the French queen. But then Mary Boleyn was called back to England after a short time, and Anne stayed in France for 6 years. So that's always been kind of an interesting part of her life. She probably learned a lot from being at the French court, which was different from the English court. And then
Wait, and also I used to always think Anne Boleyn was the oldest sister, but apparently Mary was older than her. Is that true?
that's what I've read.
Okay, I don't know why I thought that.
Well, because sometimes you think of the older sisters being maybe put
No,
in the
I
forefront.
seriously thought that I think in the other Boleyn girl, she's the older sister.
Okay, so just look that up because that was a good point, Kayla. And you're right. So The Other Boleyn Girl is a book written by Philippa Gregory, and it's sort of adult, a young adult novel book. I read it when I was probably in high school, I think. And in that, Anne Boleyn is the older sister and Mary is the younger of the two. And historians, however, agree that Mary was the elder of the two. So this is interesting that we've had different versions of the birth order. And then they had a brother, George Boleyn. So, okay, so in 1522, Anne joins Catherine of Aragon's household. So she's brought to the English court, and in all the legends and all the stories, she catches Henry VIII's eye, right? We can agree on that. And she was promised sort of fall in love with another nobleman, Henry Percy, but their marriage was prevented by Cardinal Wolsey on orders of Henry VIII. So you you have an interruption here. She probably thought she was getting married to this younger guy. She loved him. And then, boom, like, nope, not going to happen. Henry VIII has a fancy for you. And there. So to me, I think that must have been such a crazy part of her life. And then maybe she just gives up. She's like, okay, I'm going to play the game. I'm going to.
Well, yeah, I think she had zero control in any of this, so I don't think it's not that she was ambitious or anything like that. I don't think she would have it this way at all if it was in her power. But I think her father played a big role in her. I think he was a social climber. He wanted his family to
Mhm.
profit off of his daughters, and unfortunately it did not end well. I mean, I can only imagine that's part of what happened.
Definitely. And her uncle as well, the Duke of Norfolk. So her uncle and her father were scheming and had designs. And so Mary Boleyn, this is true by all accounts, that she was a mistress of Henry VIII first. And so we've seen historical fiction accounts of, how that actually played out. The other Boleyn girl stories,
But
the
she was
book,
she was married to someone else though at the time that they were
right?
an item, and she ended up pretty much having the king's son, the only
Yeah,
son he would ever no,
no,
the first son he would ever have.
well, no, and then he had a son by another mistress,
Yeah,
Bessie Blount. So I mean, no, you're right. You're right. He had a child, or she was married, and so people were. It was common for kings to have mistresses. Like that's been throughout history. That's not uncommon. What is unique about Anne Boleyn is she withheld from anything of sexual nature. That's where we kind of get that.
the ambition and the
Uh huh.
this intelligence, because she was like, well, I'm not just going to become another pregnant person that and then just be cast off. I'm gonna make him think that I love him or whatever and get him to marry me and become queen. Because I think she thought, well, once I'm queen, there's nothing he can do. But little did she know he was crazy.
Well, and it's kind of like that thing, if someone is cheating on someone with someone, what's to say they're not going to do it again too? But yeah, no, I'm with you. And that's it. I like how you said ambitious and intelligent. And it's so funny because those have two different connotations. Ambitious has like such a negative connotation, but intelligent doesn't. And really, she was just, or for women, especially for women. Um, but I think she was just working with what she was given, the situation she was in.
She was trying to make the best out of it. She was being forced to do this, and so she was like, well, then I'm gonna make this work out for me in the end.
Exactly. And she didn't want her child, if she bore a child by him, to be also cast aside and treated as a bastard child. And
Which is crazy if you think about it, because that's the reason why England has Elizabeth the First, who was, I think, the greatest monarch they've ever
uh-huh.
had. And it's all because Anne made sure she was married before anything happened. Like,
Yeah. No, and I think that's another thing. Elizabeth the First, Queen Elizabeth the First, is such an amazing figure, such an amazing queen throughout history. And the fact that she was the daughter of Anne Boleyn has made Anne Boleyn even more fascinating. And
yeah, I mean, that's why Elizabeth was so strong of a woman, is because she had a lot of her mother in her.
I'd like to think that too.
Well, so I just always have been fascinated about her life, a lot like Marie Antoinette, maybe even more so though with just Anne herself. I like to watch just random documentaries on YouTube about her, and then I started watching one recently called The Ghost of Anne Boleyn, and that was the freaking scariest video I've ever seen. Like, I don't watch that alone, like it's scary. And then I like to read comments, and someone said they were just like, I don't know why I keep watching Anne Boleyn stuff. Like, I'm gonna learn something I haven't heard before. Like, so other people, are always just drawn to her life, and we don't even really know why. It's just so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Something so intriguing. And yeah, like you said, the same with Marie Antoinette. I don't know. It just young women resonate with them.
Women in history were the ultimate underdog, and
Mhm.
who doesn't love an underdog story?
All right. Okay, so this is not typically a historical podcast that we run, Kayla. So, but we had to really give some background and context here. Let's now segue and talk about all the Anne Boleyn portrayals over the years. Now, there's so many, we're not going to be able to get into all of them. I have posted pictures and lists on Instagram. I'm thinking of doing a list on our Patreon, Kayla, for people to look into. But we're going to highlight a few of them today. And I think one of the most favorite, beloved portrayals of Anne Boleyn is Natalie Dormer in the Tudors series, which ran from 2007 to 2010.
Yes. So I remember, let's start from the beginning of my Anne Boleyn life journey. So when I was in middle school, I read a book about her life and I found her so fascinating. And then years later, when I was like in high school, the show The Tudors came out. I was like, I have to watch this, even though I was probably too young to watch that show because it was kind of had a lot of risque elements. It was a really cool interpretation of her life. And I remember thinking when I first saw Natalie, I was like, she doesn't really look like how I picture Anne Boleyn. Natalie has such a unique face. I feel like she's beautiful in a very unique way. And I mean, it ended up working out, of course, but I still don't think she looks like Anne Boleyn at all to me. But I think she did a great job portraying her.
Okay. I think that she does look like her. So there are many portraits of Anne Boleyn that we've seen. Just it's you can picture it in your mind right now, and you're kind of like you don't even know where you maybe first saw the portrait, but it's in our minds, ingrained in our minds. So when King Henry had her executed, he actually got rid of all of her portraits. What people then did is they did other paintings and portraits of what they had seen of her other paintings. So they kind of had to recreate some of the paintings and portraits. One of them is that very clear visual of her with the bee necklace, right? The gold bee with the pearls, the 3-drop pearls. That is like a famous portrait in London, National Gallery of London. And that's what people think of when they think of Anne Boleyn: the French hood, the dark brown hair, parted at the middle and straightish. I think that Natalie Dormer has a bit of a sweeter face, maybe a bit of a rounder face, a little bit of a cute nose. But when you kind of like look back, I still think she looks like her. And when they do some paintings, they do some of what we've talked about this with the Marie Antoinette shows and all that. Like they kind of put her in that historic time, a little portrait, tiny portrait that Henry VIII has in the show, but it's really Anne Boleyn. It's really Natalie Dormer's Anne Boleyn.
Yeah, they made her look like her, but like I just don't think the
Okay.
actress looks anything like Anne Boleyn.
But she acts like her, in your
Well,
opinion.
yeah, they did a great job. Like she is a great actress, and they made her look a lot like her with hair and makeup and stuff. But that doesn't like that's not really an important part of acting. Looking exactly like someone. It's
Yeah, that's true. And she just has some kind of a really great, mysterious look to her. In one of the first episodes of The Tudors, her father says, "There's something deep and dangerous in you, Anne. Those eyes of yours are like dark hooks for the soul." And I love that quote because her eyes just are darting, to and fro in the episodes. And, she's got a sharp look. And she really embodies what we like to think of as Anne Boleyn, I think.
oh yeah, she did a great job, and I love who they got to play Henry.
You like Jonathan Rhys Meyers?
Oh yeah, he's very swoon-worthy. He does a great job of playing Henry because apparently Henry was very attractive when he was younger and healthier.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And we have a very clear image of what Henry VIII looks like when he's older, with his reddish hair, his beard, overweight. So they start to make him in seasons 3 and 4 look a bit more like what we think of as Henry VIII. But I like how he's just this young, good-looking guy in the first 2 seasons when he's courting Anne. He was definitely older than her, um, but why not? This is a fiction story, anyways. It's historical fiction. Let's just get some good looking people, right?
yeah. I mean, even the portraits we have of Henry when he's older are still. I think that they still tried to make him look more attractive than he probably was when he was older.
Yeah.
He still looks pretty strong, and regal, but I think he
Mm-hmm.
was he was really going downhill. I think.
So when Anne marries Henry VIII, he's 41, right? And she's either 26 or 32, something like that, because we don't really know her exact birth date. So she was definitely younger than him by at least 11 years. And then we have Catherine of Aragon, who was 6 years older than Henry VIII. So, this is more about Anne Boleyn. We're not going to do too much on the history of Catherine of Aragon, but she's also a fascinating historical figure. And she was she was married to Henry VIII's older brother, Arthur, who passed away and then ended up staying in England for a little while, waiting around, and then they married her off to Henry. And yeah, 6 years his senior. So, anyways, flash forward, and Henry's using this marriage to his older brother between them as cause for annulment. And in doing so, he declares himself head of the church, head of the state. He kind of gets rid of the Pope and their influence for a bit. So wrapped up in Anne Boleyn's story is the English Reformation. And it's just crazy how
Yeah, like she
history.
influenced so much history just with her daughter and then with the whole marriage. Like she changed the course of the English history so
Yeah.
drastically. It's just I think that's another reason why people are so fascinated by
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. For sure. So we both agree that we like the casting and the tutors. And it's a 4-season show. They go through all of Henry's wives. And Natalie Dormer, though, for the first 2 seasons, you just can't take your eyes off her when she's on the screen. She's gorgeous. She's intriguing. Her acting is great. Costume design by Joan Bergen. The series won 3 Emmys for costumes. Now they're not historically accurate, so I know we have a lot of followers, perhaps that really are prefer the authenticity of costumes in these adaptations of period dramas. I don't mind them straying from it. I want to watch some fun stuff on TV. I love a lot of the costumes. Some of my favorites, I'll just go through them. Um, there's a dark red that she wears used in some promo photos in the beginning. It's very beautiful, almost velvety. I love this one that she wears. It's this iridescent green with a flower embroidered in the middle, and the headdress is huge and over the top. A lot of the headdresses are in this one. They're more fun, not going with the historical French hood. Her coronation look is beautiful. It's gold with pearls all over. And then one of my favorites, this is probably my favorite. In episode 7 of season 2, she wears this yellow quilted looking flower gown with long trumpet or bell sleeves, is what they're called. She's fallen out of favor with Henry. He's already just moving on and thinking of how to get rid of her. But she's just beautiful in this yellow gown with this heart-shaped headband. That's my favorite, but I like a lot of them.
No, yeah, I think they were beautiful. What specifically was very not accurate about these costumes? Was it just the women or
A lot of the headdresses are they're very costumey looking. The common headwear for the time was the French hood, and it's very hard for people to get the French hood right in the modern movies and shows. I don't think any of them get them perfect, but they were these headband looking things that's halfway back on the hair, which is parted in the middle, and then it typically always had a veil and kind of an oval shape, and it was more flat. A lot of times the French hoods are in modern, interpretations are more like a visor, like a halo looking kind of thing looking up, but these were kind of flat back. So in the tutors and in a lot of them, they have this modern approach to it. And then in the tutors, they just wear headbands and headdresses that are really bejeweled. And I like them because I love headbands for one. And I just think they're fun.
well, yeah, this French hood thing is it's not cute. I mean, that's so out.
It's hard to get a really good looking one in our eyes on the screen. So I think that people take liberties, and I like the ones in the other Boleyn girl are fun to see as well. This is directed by Justin Chadwick and costume designed by Sandy Powell. Now, What do you think about the costumes and the acting and the cast of The Other Boleyn Girl 2008?
I really like this movie because I know it's not very accurate, right? But I mean it's got all the ingredients to make a juicy tale, you know? And I think Natalie Portman looks a lot like Anne Boleyn in my head. I think she was perfect for that. And then Scarlett Johansson, she did a great job as being Mary. She made her seem very, sympathetic. You really feel for Mary and that. And then Eric Bana, he's always great to cast in a movie. He's so cute. Like we should talk about Troy. Let's just talk about Troy. No?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, I think the casting, it makes sense. Like think 2008. This is who anyone would have chosen for the movie. And Jim Sturgis plays George Boleyn, and I love Jim Sturgis from Across the Universe. But I don't know. So you think it had all the right ingredients? I agree. It had all the right ingredients, but for me, there's something missing. I don't know. I don't enjoy the movie as much as I want to.
I mean, it's not my favorite movie, but I'll watch it every once in a while and I like it.
Okay. Um, I love the costumes though. I do post the costumes a lot on my Instagram, period drama style, because they're fun. Natalie Portman wears that classic vibrant green. I think some people call it like horror green. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
No.
It's that just emerald green.
I really liked Natalie Portman in the horror green.
I'm just calling it like I see it. And then she wears some blues. And then Scarlett Johansson, her color theme is orange, yellow, gold. She does wear some red too. I love how they went with like the two different girls wearing different colors. That's always my favorite. Um, and I've done a series of posts too showing how like the other sister, the other female lead is often cast in orange, and then the lead is like more blue. It's very interesting. But anyways, um,
Which one was the other Boleyn girl?
that's a good question.
Or is it
So
both of them?
it could be seen as both of them. I always thought of it as Mary because we know Anne. We know Anne. Who do we not hear the story about? The other Boleyn girl, Mary. That's how I read it. But
Okay.
that's a good question.
No, that makes sense.
So this is based off of Philippa Gregory's book, historical fiction. And yeah, to me, there's just something like, I don't know. I don't love the movie. I want to.
I like it because it shows them when they're young and then like the Henry in this movie is terrifying. He's so scary in this one, but he's
Which,
cute because he's Eric Bana. But
which is probably real life. Like,
yeah. Well, because Henry apparently he was actually like a nice guy when he was younger. He was athletic, but then he had a really bad fall off a horse and he hit his head really bad. He was unconscious for hours. And then apparently after that, he started just becoming so tyrannical and just different.
that's crazy. Yeah. I wish he didn't go crazy if he was a good king. And I don't know. It's just crazy. Did you know, Kayla, that there was another The Other Boleyn Girl?
It was an other Boleyn girl.
Yeah. Yes. So in 2003, BBC put on The Other Boleyn Girl, and it stars Jodie May. So Kayla, we just talked about Emma. Okay. I don't know if you remember in the 2009 miniseries, the Mrs. Weston character. I don't know if you can recall her, but she plays Anne Boleyn. And that's a really interesting version. I watched it recently. They almost like do a mockumentary style, like they're doing interviews. It's really interesting. But I think the acting's pretty good. Another really classic, beloved version of Anne Boleyn's story is 1969's Anne of a Thousand Days, starring a French Canadian actress, Genevieve Bujold, and Richard Burton, who is a famous actor from the time as Henry VIII. What do you think, Kayla?
I really enjoyed this movie. I had never seen it until recently, and I'm glad I've watched it because I think the acting was so great, and I love the story. Like the flow of it was great. Costumes were amazing and eye-catching. The Anne Boleyn, like she was so great in this. Like she was strong and confident and just perfect. And the Henry, like I thought he did a great job. Like that's kind of how I picture how Henry was. He was very just like kind of a little crazy, but he was just also just very like, well, I know everything, like
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And if you think about it too, just a little note about Henry. I mean, these kings were born to think that they were God's voice to the people. They had God given right to be there. So anything they decide was, ordained.
even said in the movie, he's like, I prayed that any thought or thing that comes into my head is from God. So automatically anything I think, like that's just not how it works, dude. the
Right,
guy, the
right.
guy was like, well, I think that's just giving you an excuse. And he's like, "Ah, how dare you?"
No, but Richard Burton is fantastic in this. He received a Best Actor nomination for the Oscar, and Genevieve Bujold did as well. She got a Best Actress Oscar nomination. The costumes won that year the Best Costume Design Oscar. Margaret First. I love the costumes in this. I
No, they're
think they're
beautiful.
beautiful.
Even when she was in the dungeon, like, wait, or the tower waiting to be
Mhm.
killed, her dress was just gorgeous. Like,
I know. And she wears the French hoods. I think they might be a little more accurate. I think some are accurate, some are not. The French hoods she wears, um, because some of them have the nice veil. She also wears a gable hood, which is when it's more like pointy, like a architectural version. I love her pale yellow gold gown when the king first visits her at her family's home in Heather Castle. She wears a dark blue with like jewels in her hair, and the white gown when they're having a mass ball with daisies in her hair and pearls. I feel like Natalie Dormer's version, her coronation gown with the pearls, is kind of a nod to this version. In some instances, she wears a pale purple gown, almost gray. Her coronation look, her crown is my one of my favorite crowns of any period drama or movie. Like I love her crown that she gets to wear when it's queen. It's just, to me, it's my favorite. Um, and her acting, like you said, is spot on.
yeah, like, so this, did you say I might have missed? Did you say that the costumes were very accurate?
I think some were, and probably a bit closer, not all.
Her face doesn't necessarily look like how Anne's was, but like the way she carries herself, like she really emulated Anne, I think.
And at the beginning of this story, we see her exactly what we were talking about earlier. She's in love with someone else. She's trying to just make her way in the world, marry someone, Henry Percy. And then, nope, that's been stopped. You've got to be queen. And then, so she kind of says, I love, at a certain point, she's like, I love power even more than I love love. Like she kind of gets
Well,
pulled into it.
I think she just had been through so much, she kind of just hardened herself. She was like,
Yeah.
well, because her mom was even like, very few people actually marry for love. So
Mm-hmm.
I think she was just like, well, this is the way they're making me be.
Mm-hmm. Also, in that one, Richard Burton does a great job of acting crazy. Like you said, at a certain point, he's like, divorce is like killing. After the first time, it doesn't seem so difficult. Like, oh gosh.
And then I love that scene where she was with her daughter or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they said like, you slept with your brother or something, and she's like, oh my God, he's lost his mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like,
I love that part because it's true.
I
It's like, oh my gosh, dude. I kind of was thinking like, well, what? I wish she could just like run off with Elizabeth. And
know.
but then he kind of, it seemed like he did offer her that, and she was like, no, my child won't be a bastard.
You can kind of see that with Catherine of Aragon and with Anne Boleyn, where they kind of lose favor with Henry VIII, and then their thoughts turn towards their children, their daughters, who are going to be affected by their decisions, Mary and Elizabeth, because Henry VIII he's still looking at getting a son. At this point, when he throws over Anne Boleyn and gets with Jane Seymour, he's still just one track mind. I want a son, I want a son, I want a son. And so at a certain point, they have to just think of their daughters and not about themselves.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder because before Anne, it's almost as if Henry wasn't so obsessed with having a son. He was just kind of coasting. He was just like, guess it's not gonna work out. But then Anne, it's like she must have put that in his head, like, I'm gonna give you so many
I
sons.
know.
And it's almost as if it activated something within him, like, I want sons, you know? But maybe that's
Maybe.
not, I don't, it's just a
No,
thought.
that's your no, these are all about like our takes on things. No, I can see that because there was a time because poor Catherine of Aragon had
Well,
six pregnancies within 9 years. Two of them lived a while, or one of them lived a while, a son, and then he died. But then, of course, we have Mary. And then within a span of a few years, Anne had three miscarriages after Elizabeth. So,
with science, now we know it's actually mostly dependent on not so much the woman. And back then they blamed it all on the women because they
oh,
carried
yeah.
them.
And I mean, he was getting older at this point, not as healthy. And to blame it on the women is just so terrible.
After
So,
after a few women, I think it's you, sir.
yeah. And we can't not mention the horrible rhyme we learned growing up: divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived.
Well, I
This
mean, that's just like a, I don't think kids, it's not like a rhyme, it's more
remembering.
historians use that to like remember.
Yeah, no, it's not bad, but it's just you think like, oh,
It's sad.
that's what happened to all of these women.
After Anne's daughter was born, Elizabeth, it's almost as if he started instantly trying to look for alternatives, and he found Jane Seymour, right? And who apparently he really loved her the most, but she died, and but she did give him Edward, his son, who lived for a little bit, till for like 15 years or so.
Something like that.
I don't think he really loved Jane. I just think he was like, oh, she gave me a son.
Yeah. And Jane is also credited for, you know, Jane and his last wife, Catherine Parr, are credited with bringing Mary and Elizabeth kind of back into his good graces too. I think they were nice women. They wanted him to just love all his children. And he had other children that are not were not recognized by the church. So it's pretty crazy. And I'd love to just dive into all of the wives. There's a new movie coming out that we haven't been able to see, and it's about the sixth wife, and it's starring Alicia Vikander, and I just can't wait to see that one. Jude Law will be Henry VIII.
Oh wow. I
I
really
know.
want to see that. I
I
love
can't.
Alicia Vikander.
Alicia, yes. I love her too. Okay, so that's coming out soon. I can't wait to see it. So we talked a bit about Anne of the Thousand Days, a couple other little fun things. So apparently Richard Burton and Genevieve Bujold didn't get along during the making of it, partially because Elizabeth Taylor, who was famously married to Richard Burton twice, was quite jealous and believed in some of the rumors of them having an affair. And she was present on set a lot and probably fueling some gossip there. And she even plays a masked courtesan. About an hour into the movie, Elizabeth Taylor bursts into Catherine of Aragon's prayers, and she like puts a mask in front of her really quickly. But that's Elizabeth Taylor, who had a little cameo. Um, and it's said that Richard Burton didn't love making this movie and was surprised when he received the Oscar nomination. I think he was great as Henry VIII, but he's just a good actor.
Yeah, he did a great job. Wait, so they got married twice?
Yes.
They got divorced and then remarried again?
Yes.
Oh.
Elizabeth Taylor, I think she had eight marriages. Kind of parallels. Twice with Richard Burton. Another Anne Boleyn portrayal that I love is Claire Foy, who everyone knows as Elizabeth II in The Crown, plays Anne Boleyn in Wolf Hall from 2015. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see this one yet, but Claire Foy is amazing. I love her. And she's very sharp in this one. The whole miniseries, Wolf Hall, and it's based off a book, is focused more on Thomas Cromwell's life. So it's not even Anne at the forefront, but she's in the picture a lot. And Mark Rylance plays Thomas Cromwell. Damien Lewis plays Henry VIII. Very good representation of him. And I don't know, Claire Foy, there's a scene where she just is sitting on her throne and she makes fun of Thomas Cromwell with a French accent Cromwell, and just like I love her version of Anne, very sharp, very harsh and brutal. And there's a scene where she does archery in it, which is kind of fun. The costumes are kind of ill fitted in this one. They're too big for her little tiny frame. They're making a new version of Wolf Hall, like a second series called The Mirror and the Light. They're developing it right now with Mark Rylance and Damian Lewis, but of course, Claire Foy won't be in it because she was beheaded at the last season. But Kate Phillips is going to be Jane Seymour. And Kate Phillips is a great actress, Peaky Blinders, Miss Scarlet and the Duke. So I'm really looking forward to that one as well. Kayla, do you remember the Spencer movie that we saw in theaters together, 2021, starring Kirsten Stewart as Lady Di? But then there's this whole montage of her dressed as Anne Boleyn
Mhm.
because she's drawing parallels between her life and Anne Boleyn.
Yeah, I remember everyone was freaking out. They're like, Anne Boleyn's gonna make a cameo. And everyone's like, what? Like, it's like everybody was all excited about Anne Boleyn.
Yeah. Amy Manson plays Anne Boleyn in the Spencer movie, but then you get Kirsten Stewart wearing the garb and the bee necklace, and it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and that bee necklace is so iconic, and it's a shame apparently that nobody can find it. Like they don't
I
know what
know.
happened to it. I imagine Henry destroyed it or something.
Yeah. I think there's some like legends that she did give it to her daughter Elizabeth at one point and it was lost since then. I don't know, but it's such an iconic piece of jewelry and history.
I wish someone could find it.
Yeah, I hope it wasn't just part of the portraits, like it was real. I want to say it's real.
Oh yeah, I want to look into that more and I wonder.
I know. It's so cool. I love the pearls hanging from the bee, the three pearls, and then it's so cool. Okay, other adaptations, got to go through a lot of them. Um, Merle Oberon, who was in Wuthering Heights as an old movie and played Anne Boleyn in 1933. Vanessa Redgrave in 1966. Dorothy Tutton. I watched this one. It's called The Six Wives of Henry VIII. It's a miniseries in 1970, and Dorothy Tutton played Anne, and that's a good one. She wears this really cool orange dress in that one. Charlotte Rampling in 1972. Helena Bonham Carter in 2003. I mentioned Jodie May also in 2003. And then, some of the other ones, the more recent ones we've already mentioned, Natalie Dormer, Natalie Portman, Claire Foy. Alice Noakes plays her in The Spanish Princess 2019 through 2020. And Jodie Turner Smith played her in an Anne Boleyn series in 2021. And I haven't seen that one. So Anne Boleyn is going to be portrayed many more times after this. This is not going to be like an ending of Anne Boleyn's story. We're going to see it for years to come. Okay, Kayla. So, of some of the actresses we mentioned, Natalie Portman, Genevieve Bujold, Natalie Dormer, which one do you think looks like her the most?
Um, well, so I think honestly, none of them look like her at all.
Okay.
I think I think Natalie Portman looks maybe the closest like her. I think Genevieve Bujold did a great job. I think she kind of brought her likeness out a lot, and also Natalie Dormer, she seemed to represent her very well. I just feel like Anne had a very unique look. And I don't know if anybody's heard of that's listening to that Royalty Now YouTube channel. This graphic designer makes these really realistic images from portraits and how other people describe her, and she kind of combines them all to make this like modern look of the person. And if you look up Anne Boleyn Royalty Now, you'll see what she probably would look like with like makeup on, modern hairstyle, and everything. And she's very beautiful, but she's just very got a very unique look to her. And I just can't really think of anybody that would look just like her. Did
Okay,
you?
so you don't have anyone in mind for if you would cast?
No, I didn't say that. So
Okay.
I think that since nobody's really gonna look like her, I feel like, and I've mentioned this actress before, I think Daisy Edgar Jones could do a great job. She's British, and I think that she would do a great job. What do you think? Who do you think would be a great Anne Boleyn?
I think no, I think I can see Daisy Edgar Jones, even though you cast her in a lot of things, just like you're, you know who. But no, I think I could see that actually very well. Sophie Rundle, who was in the Peaky Blinders series, I think she could pull it off. Also in Gentleman Jack, and like I think she might have blue eyes, and Anne Boleyn's eyes are mentioned as beautiful black eyes.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Sophie Rundle, maybe?
Eh, no.
Ooh, okay. You know who I think would make a pretty good Anne Boleyn? Olivia Cook. She's in Vanity Fair 2018, that mini series as Becky Sharp. I feel like that's kind of a nice, similar character to Anne Boleyn, has sort of a plan in mind, and but still likable. And she's been in House of the Dragon as well, and people like her in that. So, yeah, Olivia Cook. I think I can see it. But I do think your Daisy Edgar Jones could be good. Yeah. Let's go with that one. I think Henry VIII, I think a lot of actors can play him. People just have to give him a beard and make him act kind of crazy. But I love Damian Lewis as him because I think he does that role very well in Wolf Hall. I didn't love Eric Bana in the role 100%.
What?
I don't know. I think again, but I said this with the Little Women when the A-list actors are just too like recognizable. Sometimes I can't get into their character so much. Um, I'm just like, oh, that's Eric Bana. um, but I don't know. I don't know. I think I like Damian Lewis the best.
Well, yeah,
He's got the red hair.
I think it's best to get someone with red hair because I mean that's what he's most famous for is having red hair.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Kayla, I don't know if you remember this. This is just kind of silly, but back in 2008 when The Other Boleyn Girl was coming out, I had just read the Philippa Gregory book and I was very obsessed with the making of the movie, and like I went to theaters to go see it. And I remember Natalie Portman and Scarlett Johansson, they did an interview, and I want to find it again. And Scarlett Johansson is looking at Natalie Portman as she's speaking as if she was just like in love with Natalie Portman. I don't know if
oh,
you remember
yes,
that.
that went viral. I want to see that.
Yeah, viral for 2007, 8 is
I mean,
crazy to
that's
think
when
of.
YouTube first came out, was like in '07, '06.
hmm And then another fun memory, back when the Tudors was out, I was like on the Tudors website or something, and you could upload your photo and they would make it look like Anne Boleyn. And I remember doing that. I wish I still had
Oh my
that
gosh, I
saved.
wish you had that.
I know. So definitely went through like an Anne Boleyn phase. And that would have been for me towards the end of my high school,
Wait, let's see
2007.
if they still have the website up. Maybe they still have it. Theotherbolinggirl.com.
No, no, this one was the Tudors.
Oh, the Tudors. I don't know.
Showtime, the Tudors. Yeah, I can't imagine it being in existence. I'll have to look and do a deep dive of my files and see if I have this picture of me with the French hood and everything.
I feel like I did that too, honestly.
hmm
Man, yeah, I can't
Who
find it.
doesn't want to look like Anne Boleyn?
I can't find anything online. It's gone. We've progressed in the timeline too far.
But as I said, like who didn't want to look like Anne Boleyn when all these things are coming out? She is such an iconic look with the French hood, as I've said, the dark hair, jewel, the bee necklace, the pearls and the jewels. I mean, it's such a cool historical figure.
I think we know what your Halloween costume should be this year.
Just got to get a bee necklace on Etsy.
Oh, I'm sure you can find them.
Let's talk a little bit about her downfall, if you want to call it that. Of course, we're not putting the blame on her. She was wrongly accused of treason, of infidelity. Mark Smeaton, the musician, was arrested, and others, Henry Norris, Francis Weston, William Brereton, and her brother George was accused of incest and treason. It's just terrible. They were beheaded on May 17th of 1536. And 2 days later, on May 19th, 1536, Anne Boleyn was beheaded. And her speech, her words have been documented in history. Apparently, she said, I pray God save the king and send him long to reign over you, for a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there never. And to me, he was ever a good and gentle sovereign lord, something like that. Um, and then she is credited with also saying to someone to deliver these words to Henry: from a private gentlewoman, you've made me first a marchioness, then a queen. And as you can raise me no higher in the world, you are sending me to be a saint in heaven. So, just some crazy, powerful words, final messages. I feel like in these adaptations, she's often wearing like a light purple, almost grayish dress in these scenes where she's taken to the scaffold. Those scenes always get me. Like they're so real, and you can just see her face, and they're putting her hair up, they're taking off her jewelry. How terrible to be a young woman. She was possibly 29 or 35. I mean, it's just crazy.
I know it's just terrible what he did, but at least because he had the option to burn her at the stake, so at least he didn't choose that because I feel like that's way worse. And then they also brought in a French swordsman who was very highly skilled, who got it done quickly in one stroke. So at least she had that going for her. Sad, but
Yeah, it's tough. But just can you, I always put myself in her place, like when those scenes are happening, and I'm like, I would be mortified. I couldn't maintain my dignity. I think I would be begging for mercy.
good thing you're
Okay.
not Henry's one of Henry's wives.
Oh my
Because you probably
goodness.
would have ended up there.
In the end, she did give birth to Elizabeth. She was queen for 1,000 days, right?
I love that part in the movie when she was just like picking up the little sticks that had 100 days on them, which I don't, why were those there? And she was just like, 100 days of this or that. And I just thought that was cool. And
Yeah. So she was Queen of England for 1,085 days from her marriage to her death. That's 2 years, 11 months, and 20 days of being Queen of England. And then
yeah,
Henry kept going, kept trying for a son, kept trying wives, not working for him,
I know.
ruining people's lives.
I've always kind of wondered because he had like a son by Mary Boleyn. Of course, she was like married to someone else, and but it's just a shame. It's like he was that desperate to have a boy. What if he could have managed to get them divorced somehow and just marry Mary, and then he'd have the son, like be done with it.
Yeah, what if, It's just he wanted a legitimate one, and Anne was on the right track, I guess, trying to get a legitimate child, but
Can
I
you
don't know.
imagine having all that pressure on you to have a boy, and then you
Yeah.
give birth to a beautiful baby girl, and the disappointment from everyone, and then you have another baby that is a boy and it's born stillborn. Can you imagine the stress and ugh, I cannot imagine.
And I think that's maybe they focus on that whole bit in the other Boleyn girl movie. It gets to the pit of your stomach, like thinking about the miscarriages and the pressure. And I think I don't enjoy watching that. Maybe that's why I don't love that movie so much. And then she goes to her brother and is like kind of like talking to him about
Well, that
so,
part's weird, and I
solutions.
think they could have done without that part for sure. That because that's not really accurate. It's just kind of
No,
make
it's part of the Philippa Gregory book, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I know. So I think that's why, like you said, I like the flow of Anne of the Thousand Days. I think The Tudors is such a wonderfully made. I know there's historical plot holes and inaccuracy, but the way those two versions are kind of put together, it's just more enjoyable to watch, I think, than the other Boleyn girl, personally.
yeah. I think you and I should make an Anne Boleyn movie.
Ooh. Can you see? I wonder if Sophia Coppola would do it.
Oh, that would be cool. I would see that.
You and I are such big
Let's
Sophia
just
Coppola
start. Let's just
fans.
start making our own period films, Carly. So, Anne of a Thousand Days, of the Thousand Days. It's just easier for me to say Anne of a Thousand Days. Anyway, I just really love this movie. It's going to be one of those movies that I go back to at least once a year. I have certain movies where I have to watch it at least once a year. I loved this movie, and I love, I've mentioned this before that it's certain movies that are period films, made about a certain period of time, like a long time ago. This one, 1530s or so. And I love that it was made in the late 60s. Like, I just think that kind of came through in such a cool way. And I just love the combination of time periods.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree.
Because there's some 60s music that has like a Renaissance sound to it.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that. One thing I also like in the Tudors is they mention Anne Boleyn's mottos a bit, and I feel like they don't ever mention that. So all of Henry VIII's wives and women of the time had personal or family mottos. So Catherine of Aragon's was humble and loyal. And then Anne Boleyn had three: the most happy, let them grumble, that is how it's going to be, and me and mine. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting. And then Jane Seymour's bound to obey and serve. Anne of Cleves, God send me well to keep. Catherine Howard, no other wish but his. Poor Catherine Howard. And Catherine Parr, to be useful in all I do. So this idea of having a personal woman's motto, like maybe like a mantra nowadays, I don't know. It's interesting. And I like Anne Boleyn's, the most happy, let them grumble.
Well, I guess that makes Henry's motto divorced, beheaded,
Died,
died, divorced,
divorced,
beheaded,
beheaded,
survived.
survived. Ugh.
Ugh.
But do you agree with me that growing up in history class, they didn't talk about what a monster he was?
No, it was like,
Like,
no, it was like, oh yeah, King Henry, he had the six wives of King Henry, divorced, beheaded, died. And they were like, oh, and I'm sure you've heard of Anne Boleyn. She was very ambitious and she got herself killed.
no, but seriously, it isn't until nowadays that they really show Henry VIII as just being horrible and
A narcissist.
a narcissist, just totally.
He was a man child. He was like obsessed with like romance. He loved being in love
Mhm.
and like he just lost interest so quickly.
And even with his advisors, you have Wolsey, Thomas Cromwell, Thomas More. He just changes his mind on them so much, and then he kills them, and then he regrets it later. It's just he's
Well, yeah, he got brain damage. Seriously, though, like I've watched
yeah.
documentaries, like your brain is very delicate.
Ugh. And yeah, yeah, so much. The War of the Roses happened before. I mean, the history around the Tudors and before that, the War of the Roses, the York and the Lancaster families. It's so fun and enjoyable to dig into, and it's just crazy.
Oh yeah, the Tudors are definitely my favorite to research. It's just
And we have to eventually do a podcast, Kayla, on Elizabeth because
oh
I
yeah, I love the
love.
movies.
I know. Well, yeah, I love all the versions, and I think Kate Blanchett as Elizabeth is my favorite.
Oh yeah.
All right. So thank you all for sticking with us, listening to our take on Anne Boleyn, the historical figure, and the many portrayals of the young woman who became the Anne Boleyn. Yeah, we appreciate you listening. Would love to hear your feedback. I'm going to put a list together of all of these Anne Boleyn portrayals, put it on our Patreon. We'd love for you to subscribe to that. And you'll also get a chance to see our videos of us talking, my sister and myself talking. You'll get some fun graphics, and we're going to really work on some cool content there for you. Also, make sure and subscribe to us on Instagram, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We are at Swoon-Worthy Podcast on Instagram.
Thank you guys so much for following along. This is really a passion project for me and my sister, and we hope to continue doing it for years to come. So your support is always appreciated.
Thank you, and can't wait to talk more period dramas next time.